Pay close attention. What you're seeing today is fulfilling Bible prophecy. Welcome back to YPN News. Jeff, what do you have to start us off today?
Well, Katan, unemployment continues to rise as more and more people are losing their jobs. CBS News recently interviewed Gloria Hall, a 62-year-old social worker who used to earn $22,000 a year. She lost her job last July when the hospital she worked in closed and has been looking for work every day since then.
Hall and her 19-year-old grandson, who is also unemployed, recently attended a job fair outside of Atlanta but found nothing. When asked, how do you hold it together in those moments when it's the hardest, she said, I have to think about my kids and grandkids. I really do.
She went on to say, I have to find something to focus on, else it gets to the point where you just kind of go like, why bother? So she continues to move forward, even though the perspective for finding employment looks bleak.
The International Labor Organization, which is the organization responsible for drawing up and overseeing international labor standard, said that the global market may not regain its pre-crisis level for at least 5 years, 1 year later than previously expected, increasing the potential for social unrest.
Now, Business Week reported the director of the ILO's Geneva-based International Institute for Labor Studies unit, Raymond Torres, said, we have reached the moment of truth. We have a brief window of opportunity to avoid a major double dip in employment.
More than 200 million people globally are out of work, a record high as almost 2/3 of advanced economies and half of developing countries are experiencing a slowdown in employment growth, the group said.
While the world needs to create a net 80 million new jobs over the next 2 years to get employment back to the level before the financial crisis in 2008, the recent weakness in the global recovery means that only half that number will be created, according to the ILO.
The report also found that in 45 countries out of 118 analyzed, the risk of social unrest is rising as governments cut spending to reduce budget deficits and tensions mount about a lack of jobs and economic inequality. Areas that showed the greatest potential for disorder include the European Union, the Arab region, and to a lesser extent, Asia, the ILO said.
In a recent interview on RT, Prime Minister Vladimir Putin responded to a question regarding a statement made by US Senator John McCain. Senator McCain stated that he, referring to the Prime Minister, could follow the same fate as Muammar Gaddafi. He was also asked if he thought that statement was an idle threat or a real plan by the West.
Putin said that Senator McCain's statements weren't meant for him but all of Russia, and that some countries would like for Russia to get out of the way and stop interfering in the ruling of the world. They're still afraid of our nuclear potential. That's why Russia's always in the spotlight, and that's why it's a pain in the neck for many.
Now, he also went on to say to express his hope that Russia maintains its independent foreign policy and that they have more friends than enemies. Putin's scorn for the statements didn't stop there. The Prime Minister went on to recall Senator McCain's time served in Vietnam and how he believed he had enough civilian blood already on his hands and questioned the reasoning of the public display of the killing of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi and the international interference with their democratic process.
He also expressed that even if it was necessary for Gaddafi to quit, that should have been left up to the people of Libya and their democratic process.
Now, in other parts of Russia, opponents of Prime Minister Vladimir Putin took to the streets on Russia's biggest cities in greater numbers than ever before. Tens of thousands came out on the streets to tell Prime Minister Vladimir Putin they'd had enough. As reported by ABC News, one Russian protester said, "I came here with my friends because we demand fair elections, and we want to say to Putin, go away."
Demonstrators are demanding the parliamentary elections that recently were held be redone, claiming it was rigged by Putin and his party. The government says that is not going to occur. The next big test Putin faces And the only test that counts is the presidential election scheduled for March 4th. Do you want Putin to return to presidency? Shouted one activist. No, the crowd responded.
Now, continuing around the Great River Euphrates, moving eastward to Syria, where the largest demonstrations in months have been. The citizens are calling for the resignation of President Bashar al-Assad. Their hope is to also show recently arrived Arab League monitors how strong their movement is.
Despite the fact that the visiting monitors were amongst protesters in their high visibility vests, groups of protesters, some appearing to be as large as several 100,000 strong, were continually shadowed by the Assad regime. Monitors or not, they fired into the crowds, mounting up the casualties and wounding anyone in their paths.
While some protesters are glad to see the observers and look at them as heroes, others are angry, accusing the monitors of following a government-arranged schedule, as well as taking into consideration that some of the monitors come from countries with questionable human rights records themselves.
In the next few days, the monitors should have a report ready. Then the question should be answered as to their visit being a serious investigation or just a stalling tactic for a regime intent on staying in power.
Now, Iran is threatening to block a vital oil shipping route as tensions increase in the Middle East. Tehran is holding large-scale war games in neutral waters near the Hormuz Straits. The U.S. sent its own presence to the region to make sure the strait remains open. In response to Iran's warning, the U.S. said no such disruption would be tolerated and that the U.S. Fifth Fleet that's based in the Gulf would ensure that that doesn't happen.
The Strait of Hormuz links the Gulf and the oil-producing state of Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to the Indian Ocean. In total, about 40% of the world's oil tanker shipped oil passes through the strait. Now, this is the main oil artery, and if that were to be cut off, it will cause turmoil in the global oil market. However, Saudi officials have stated that Gulf nations were ready to offset any loss of Iranian crude.
The U.S. thinks Iran is bluffing because Iran has made such threats before, but they may not be bluffing anymore as Iran finds itself in a situation where its main source of livelihood, crude oil, is in danger. A bill has passed by the U.S. Congress that would dramatically complicate transactions through Iran's central bank. European and Asian nations import Iranian oil and use its central bank for their transactions.
If President Obama signs that bill, it's going to hurt the Iranian economy severely. Around 80% of its revenues depend on crude oil sales. In the coming weeks, UN ministers will also make a decision on whether or not to boycott Iranian oil. As tensions rise, the West says all Iran has to do is give up their nuclear program.
Iran says that they are not doing anything wrong by pursuing a peaceful nuclear program for civilian purposes. The rhetoric in Washington against Iran is getting very harsh. The U.S. spy drone shot down by the Iranians. Before that, Washington accusing Iran of plotting to kill the Saudi ambassador to the U.S. and blow up the Israeli and Saudi embassies in Washington.
Now, those were just some of the most recent episodes. It all adds up and creates a lot of tension. Now, if something happens over the Strait of Hormuz, this could erupt into an all-out war.
We now go to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, who is continuing to report on the tension we see in Iran. Larry, what do you have for us?
Thanks, Jeff. There was more tension this week on behalf of the United States and Iran, and this, Tehran's latest decision to hold large-scale war games in the Straits of Hormuz, a move which, if executed in actuality, would cut off up to 40% of the petroleum supply to a global system absolutely addicted to oil, is causing some people to question just how far this all goes before it erupts into war. In attempting to address that concern, Robert Naiman, an analyst and policy director interviewed for Russia's RT News, casually described the situation as mere brinksmanship, veiled language intended to classify the actions of both parties as an effort to fill out the other's boundaries. Yet even he acknowledged that that sort of behavior has the undeniable potential to contribute to circumstances which could very easily spiral out of control. In the end, despite any other questions, one thing is for certain. For America and its allies, a nuclear Tehran is unacceptable. Yet for whatever they intend to try and stop them, Iran which is scheduled to test fire a long-range missile in the Persian Gulf this week, has every intention of fighting back. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Gatan, Jeff, back to you.
Thank you for that report, Larry. Well, that's our report for today. Stay tuned as Israel Hawkins explains Bible prophecy and the news as it relates to it. I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thanks for watching.